Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson, and this is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson. If you're watching the YouTube version, we are unplanned. We're matching. I have new spring apparel that just came out, and it just arrived, so we have a little recency bias, but we are living in these, and we're wearing the navy and gray version of each other. So it's kind of cute, unintentional matching. But this week we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. This is actually something that someone had reached out months ago and asked about us to kind of touch on imposter syndrome. And I don't know, at the time, I think I must have been in a flow where I was like, I don't feel like I can speak to it to the level of which I know I have in the past. But undoubtedly, it's going to swing back around. And at that point, I think that I could talk with a little bit more conviction. So it feels fitting. The past couple weeks, I've had a bout of imposter syndrome, and I've talked to Brett about it. So I feel like being able to share on the podcast just my experience with imposter syndrome, how I've kind of combated it over time, and just the universal experience of it all. I want to know, though, have you ever had imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
In what sense?
It's a little bit easier for me to call it something else, I think, than what you view it as, because you're in the limelight so much, with the nature.
Relative limelight.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, with the nature of your business being on social media, and you are your own brand to a large extent. So, I think it's a little bit easier for you to kind of fall into that trap.
Yeah, I would agree. And I actually, a year or so ago, I did a deep dive on imposter syndrome and like kind of the origin of it. I don't really know why. Maybe it was for the original podcast. I might have had an episode on imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome actually, like, it began from overachieving women. Like, that's where the origin was, which makes sense. As an overachieving woman, I'm like, okay, I can identify with that even deeper. But if you're unfamiliar with imposter syndrome, basically it's someone that's in a position that they feel doubtful about, or it almost feels like someone's going to find you out, or you're not qualified to be in the position you're in,
or not feeling worthy of success.
Yeah, you're not feeling worthy of the success you have. So recently, and I'm not sure if it's just, if you didn't know, Brett and I had to put one of our dogs down the week before last. So it's been about a week and a half now. And typically I'm very emotionally resilient. But that took me out. Like, emotionally, mentally, it just kind of zapped me. And I think that just really got me out of my flow. And it's been tough getting back into that. And I feel like with that kind of tidal wave, it also has it's put a lot of doubt in my mind about my abilities and my place. So it's really sucked. Like, I haven't really wanted to post on social media because I just get into these headspaces where I'm like, okay, nothing I say is original. Nothing I say is going to bring any more value than the next person. So what's the point of me sharing it? And even though I preach and I talk and I know that that's false, it still is in my head where I'm like, what's the point? Like, someone said that before. It's just me putting on a new spin on it. And that's the exact reason why I should continue to share it, because maybe this is the first time anyone's ever heard it, or maybe the way that I deliver it is the way that someone needs to hear. But I do get into my head, and just in the past couple of weeks, that's been something that I have really dealt with, where it's like, what's the point of saying what I want to say when I'm sure someone else has already said it, or they could say it better, or they could bring more experience to it. And it's something that I have struggled with in the past, and for a while I had kind of gotten out of that, just because you can look at your evidence that, like Brett had mentioned, like not feeling worthy of the success you've seen. And sometimes I get into that, and then I can look at all the great people that I work with and all of the incredible individuals that have chosen to work with me, and it kind of devalues them. If I believe that I'm not worthy of it, then I believe that they made a wrong decision, or that they're not choosing wisely. And I don't believe that at all. I think that these people are more than capable, that they're, just incredible. So then I kind of can recognize my own worth. But it just, I don't know, it's something that I battle with every now and then, and I share it with you. You can take the brunt of it.
Yeah, I feel like just like everything else, it comes and goes. Emotions are fleeting, and sometimes it just hits you like a brick wall, and it sucks. And you get into this mindset of why are people listening to me, and why does it matter what I say relative to what somebody else has to say? But I think you have to keep this in perspective, that that people come to you specifically because they like you. And, that goes for everybody. If you follow one individual, then most of the time you're following that individual because there's a characteristic about them that you enjoy and that you can relate to. And so if somebody is following you, if someone's following Lexi J Wellness, then more than likely they either know you or they enjoy your content or they enjoy the spin you put on things. And you have to understand that, when you get in these mindsets, that somebody is looking to you specifically, not to another, account that is out there that may have said something very comparable to what you said the exact same day, the exact same hour. Because they didn't see that because they want to hear it from you. They want to hear your spin on it. They want to hear your interpretation of it. And I think that you have to keep that in perspective, because that's why you are in the position you're in, because people like you and people want to hear your perspective.
It's so true. And I logically can recognize that because I follow people, I listen to people's content for that very reason. In the self-development world, we've talked about this before, but I mean, it's pretty much the same overarching themes, like consistency and the basics and compounding effect and just all of these grit, the foundations of the self-developmental world are very universal. It's the spin that people put on it. It's the delivery. It's the approach of basically the same principles. But even yet, I still follow specific accounts or specific people. I listen to different, I listen to the same podcast over and over again, or the same channel over and over again, because I like the way that those people present it and the way that they interpret that. And I think if you think about religion, and there's a reason that you go to the church or you listen to the pastor, preacher, theologian that you do, because you like their interpretation of the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bible is the exact same across the board, but people are going to have different interpretations. They're going to have different approaches to it that hits home for you. And I think that, not that what I'm preaching or what I'm saying, is biblical at all, but I think parallels can be drawn for sure. Mm-hmm. It's all about delivery and how you prefer it. So it's a good reminder. So if imposter syndrome is something that you deal with, I think that's something that is really important to remember, because even if it's just one person that relates to you more than someone else, that's one person that you're impacting, and it doesn't stop with them, because then that impact is going to extend onto their kids and their significant others and their coworkers and their employees and their students. And that's a really big deal. And it's a huge responsibility. And I think sometimes when I get into those headspaces where I do feel unworthy to share, or I feel like it's no more valuable than the next person, I have to remember the impact. And I think kind of providing that evidence of why it's worthwhile. Maybe it's just one interaction that you've got. If you're new to sharing your journey on social media, but one person said that because of you, they started getting up and walking in the morning, or because of you, they started prioritizing a gratitude journal, or because of you, they blocked out their screen time and they're spending more time with kids. Whatever that is, you're setting that ripple effect into that person's life, and it's dominoing into their entire family. And that should not be undervalued. So I think that's something that I have to remind myself of. I have to look back at the evidence. And because of that, I have a bad day folder. I've talked about this on social media before, but I need to kind of revamp my bad day folder. I have screenshots of messages that I've received on Instagram, on Facebook, in the First Form app, and it sounds very vain saying it, but it's basically like Lexi, you're in this for a reason. You're in the position you're in for a reason. It's confirmation that I'm doing what I should be doing, because as cheesy as it sounds, I really do feel like this is my mission on earth, is to impact as many lives as I can. And I have to remember that. And I have to remember that there's a lot of worth in the position I have, and that I'm worthy of being in it. So I have this bad day folder, and it's basically just screenshots of evidence saying, you're here for a reason. You're doing a good job, because we all have doubts, and that's not something that is unique to any one person, although it feels like it when you're the one experiencing it. It's very universal, but it's not the fact that we all go through it. It's the fact, or it's the difference in how we respond to it that really matters.
Yeah. So one of your core principles is uncompromising authenticity, right?
Yes, sir.
So whenever you're uncompromisingly authentic, you're naturally going to have people gravitate to you and gravitate away from you, because whenever you're authentic, you're naturally going to have people that dislike you, because anybody who's genuinely authentic is going to basically push a 50% of the crowd most likely away from you, because if you're acting like, a unique individual, then you're going to have unique opinions and unique approaches to things that others aren't going to like. But you're also going to have 50% that's going to love you, because they're going to relate to you in such a profound way that they're just going to absolutely just love you. And that's the audience that you're preaching to. And with that, you have to, that all comes into play with this whole concept that we're talking about, with this uneasiness in what you're doing, what you're saying, and whether or not you feel worthy of it. Because there's going to be a 50% of the crowd that says, screw that girl, I don't like what she has to say. But you don't care about them, because they're going to be there no matter what realm you go into, no matter who's talking. If you are unless you're pretending to be something you're not and trying to appease everybody, which then you're just going to be this murky water that nobody really gravitates to at all.
Yeah, if everyone likes you, then no one really loves you.
Exactly. So what you're doing is you're talking to the people that want to hear from you, and you have to keep that in mind through this whole process. Whenever you start feeling like you're in this imposter syndrome mind state, that it's the people that want to hear from you, that they're like, I want to hear what Lexi has to say on this. I don't care what this guy has to say about it, even if he's the most qualified individual in the world and he's been doing it for 30 years. I want to hear what Lexi has to say on it, because they want to hear you, because they love you and they gravitate to you.
You're a really good person to talk to. I'm glad I started a podcast with you. I'm even more glad I married you. I think that those were all such good points. And to your point of not everyone is going to love you, and that is good, because if everyone likes you, then nobody really loves you. Like, if you don't say things with enough conviction to like appeal to some people and really turn some people off, then I feel like you're just lukewarm. You're lukewarm. You're trying to appeal to the masses, and it really doesn't hit home for anyone. And that imposter syndrome really heightens when you put a disproportionate emphasis on the people that are not attracted to your content, that are not aligning with what you're saying. And that's okay, because you're not going to appeal to everyone. You don't like everyone, so don't expect everyone to like you also. And it's about refocusing towards the audience that you're talking to and the people that are receiving what you're saying and absorbing it, applying it, putting it into their lives, because that's who you're making an impact in. The other half is going to send you in their DMs. They're going to talk shit. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. What else did you say that I really wanted to touch on? I'm blanking.
Yeah. Well,
you had some good stuff. I might come back to it.
Okay. Yeah, the rest of the people that disagree with what you're saying or don't like what you're saying, they're just noise. They're always going to be there. That's just background noise. Yeah. And it's really honestly probably a good sign if you have those people that are there in the background just talking shit on you constantly, because if you didn't, then that would mean that you didn't have the other 50% of the people that genuinely cared about what you thought.
And when you try to appeal to everyone, it's very transparent to the majority of people that you are pandering to the masses. Like, if you are trying to make everybody happy, then chances are that's not actually your viewpoint on everything, and it looks really inauthentic.
And chances are you're not happy either.
Yeah, because you're spouting bullshit just for a like or a share from someone whose opinion you really don't even care about. Yep. That you don't value their input. If you wouldn't go to them for advice, then why do you care about their criticism? Mm-hmm. I think what you were saying when you were talking about uncompromising authenticity, it's something that every single time, I was actually talking to my mom about this recently, because she had a really cool win professionally, and she went to a conference. My mom is an elementary principal, and she is so passionate about education and so passionate about bettering kids' lives. And she had said that they got asked to speak. She's an administrator for a really small school district, but out of like a region of states, like 4 different states, their school was one of 3 districts that got asked to speak. And she had talked, it was about like behavioral intervention for kids with behavioral issues. And my mom is so passionate about like making sure every kid feels valued and welcome and seen. And I feel like that has been instilled in me, and that's where I get it. But when she was talking about it, she was really proud. And she said, I honestly got kind of emotional up there speaking. So I hope it didn't make me look unprofessional or something along those lines. And it made me really proud for her, because I know for a fact, anytime that I felt embarrassed or silly and I've gotten emotional, without a doubt, I get such better engagement. I get such better feedback, and people respond and they're like, thank you for being real. Thank you for being an actual person. Like, I felt this way also. Thank you for sharing. And when I get vulnerable, when I get authentic like that, then I feel like I'm making so much more of an impact, that I bring in so much more value to someone else, because they can understand that this is a real human on the other side. It's not an ad or a smiling face or an endorsement that you're just looking for a click or a buy. If you show up and you're exactly who you are, then people really respond to that and they love it. I sort of got out of I had a little moment of clarity out of the imposter syndrome, out of a very vulnerable position. If you guys follow me on social media, I posted on my story and I started crying talking about it, because it was just really special. And I had this realization. I shared this with Brett the other day. I had this realization that if I'm serious about the impact I want to make, if I'm serious about the vision I have for Lexi J Wellness and just the impact overall, creating little domino effects everywhere I go, then it's going to take me being incredibly uncomfortable, and the least of which that discomfort is coming from physical. It's going to have to be me extending my hand and me initiating conversations, me, inviting interactions and not waiting for them to slide into my DMs. Like, I have to be aggressive about making an impact if I'm serious. And what I say with such conviction, like, the actions have to align with them for it to really mean anything. Otherwise, I'm just a talking head behind a stupid microphone. And there are enough of those. So I was on a run recently, and this was genuinely, it's kind of funny that I have to start that sentence with a run, because it's the first run I've had in like a year and a half. That was more than a mile maybe. But I'm just too stubborn not to get my steps in. So I was really behind and I needed to go for a run to get some steps fast. So I was on a run and I had passed this man and his daughter walking in our neighborhood. And I was just like, as I passed them, I was like, that's so cute. I love that. I love that they're just getting out, getting some exercise. And then I had circled back around a little bit later and I had seen that they were playing basketball in their driveway. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I should say something, because, my dad means so much to me. Him working out and getting active meant so much to me as an adult, that I think it's really admirable that he's doing that and he's young and they get to have these memories together, or that she's young. But I didn't say anything, because I was like, he doesn't want to hear from me. He doesn't want to hear from this random person running by, and it's embarrassing, because then I would have to explain why it meant something to me, and then I would get vulnerable. I would likely start crying, and I was like, okay, let's keep running. But the whole time I was running, I was like, that could be the conversation that hits home for that man. He could have had a horrible day. He could have, it could be the last time that he decided to go for a walk or to work out to play basketball with his daughter, because it's seemingly insignificant. But if I said something, maybe that was the domino. Maybe that set something in motion for him and his daughter, and then his wife and their other kids. So I was like, all right, if I turn back around and they're still up there, it had probably been like 20 minutes by now. I'm like, if they're still in their driveway, then I'll stop and talk to him. And I ran up there and they weren't in their driveway. And a little part of me was like, okay, breath of fresh air, sigh of relief. I don't have to talk to this stranger. I don't have to get vulnerable. And I was like, actually, that opportunity is still there. That could be the moment. That could be the thing that he looks back on and they're like, do you remember when that random stranger came up and said that was really cool to see? That could be the thing that made this man start prioritizing his health and taking care of himself in order to take care of his girls. So I was like, okay, suck it up, Lexi. I knocked on the front door and I'm standing on this stranger's porch, like shaking, nervous. And it was really scary. The whole time I'm like, okay, the worst thing that can happen is I just feel embarrassed. Mission accomplished. I'm already embarrassed before they even open the door. So a while passes and a mom comes to the door with a little girl. Like, it was obviously just got done with bath time. She was very busy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, perfect. I'm interrupting also. So I was like, is your husband here? I saw him and your daughter were playing basketball earlier. I just wanted to let him know how cool that was. And I kind of left it at that. And she was like, oh yeah, sure. So she hollers down and he comes back up. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to get emotional. So I was like, I had seen you while I was running. I saw you guys walking, and then I saw you playing basketball, and I thought about stopping, but I just didn't want to be a bother. But I just wanted to let you know how cool that was to see. And I kind of give a little backstory on, like, that was never something that my dad and I did when we were younger. But he has since taken care of himself, and it's something that I get to watch him be active with my nieces and my nephews. And that's a really cool memory that your daughter gets to have. I said, just keep showing up. And I didn't say that as seamlessly as I just did, because I started crying on this stranger's porch. I was embarrassed, but it meant a lot to him. And then I walked home, and I had talked about it on my story, and I got so much engagement from like the stories that people responded with. They were talking about how their relationship with their dad wasn't what they had wanted, but their husbands with their kids is so much better, or they lost their dad recently, or they are a dad that really needed to hear that to start taking care of themselves. And it was getting vulnerable and being embarrassed and extending that hand when I really didn't want to, that provided so much value to other people. And it's typically not the perfectly curated stuff that you see on Instagram that you think requires or that makes you valid or makes your presence justifiable, that really makes the most impact. It's being authentically you and showing up exactly who you are, and you're going to make such an impact in doing that. You don't have to transform. You don't have to wait until you have X amount of followers. You don't have to wait until you've lost this many pounds or you've accomplished this much in business or had a net worth of this much. Like, act now. Start creating that domino effect now. You're overly qualified to impact someone's life right now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest overarching things is if somebody waits to be qualified, or, I say qualified loosely, or to be in a certain position of success before they actually feel like they're in a position where they can talk to people about these types of things, then nothing would ever happen. Because in order to really get yourself to that level, it's not faking it till you make it. Like, it's learning, and it's applying, and it's having conversations, and it's just this whole building block process of becoming, who you want to be, and committing to that thing. But if you don't start, then you're never going to get there. And imposter syndrome is just something that you're going to experience naturally along the way because you're a human being. And that's just human nature to start questioning yourself.
And you're a human being with intention to do good.
Exactly.
Like you would never have imposter syndrome if you were just a bum on the couch with no ambition. So the fact that you do have it means that you're striving for something more. And I think that's important to know as well.
And the other side of the coin, you would never have imposter syndrome if you were an egotistical asshole. If you were strictly concerned about, your own image and just making yourself seem as perfect as possible, then you wouldn't reflect on yourself and think, am I qualified to be in the position that I'm in and affect the people that I'm affecting?
One of the quotes that I can't remember if it was a guest on Ed Milet's podcast or if it was Ed Milet himself, but he says, you are supremely qualified to help the person that you used to be. So in this instance, that little girl that was hanging out with her dad, like, that was me at one point, and I'm supremely qualified to help and make an impact in their life. And maybe you are 25 pounds into your fitness journey and you need to lose 100 in order to get to a healthy weight. So you're only a quarter of the way there and you don't feel qualified to make an impact. 25 pounds ago, you would love to hear from today you. Like, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, the person you are right now is the perfect person to learn from because you know exactly the journey they're taking. It's a lot harder to get inspiration, like valid and relatable inspiration from someone that is so far down the road from you that has crossed all of those bridges and, they've already made it, quote unquote.
Right.
It's hard to get that same inspiration, but if you can look for someone just a little bit further down the road from you, that's a clear path to follow. That's a very empowering position to be in because they're doing it right now. They're actively doing it. And if they can do it, you can do it.
Right. And then that creates
a domino effect.
Right.
We didn't even plan that. You helped me with my imposter syndrome. I am feeling a little bit better. And I do think just getting really uncomfortable and initiating that interaction helped me a lot because it kind of reignited what I'm so passionate about. And as genuinely, I think it's cheesy to be like my mission on earth, but I really do think that's it. That's my calling. That's why I'm here. Yeah. So I need to start acting like it. I need to continue acting like it. Right.
Yeah. I don't think it's cheesy to say you have a mission. You can say it in a really cheesy way, I suppose, but I think that it's noble to feel like you have a purpose and a mission, to do something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm here for, is just to contribute, to give back something.
To make somebody's life better than they ever thought it could possibly be.
Yeah, to leave them better than I found them. Well, if you guys have experienced imposter syndrome, I hope that some of this hit home for you, or you can relate to it, apply some of the things that helped me, just stacking that evidence and remembering that you are valuable and you're worthy to be in the position you are. You're in it for a reason. And the fact that you have those thoughts in general is kind of a clue to say that, hey, you're in the right position. Like Brett said, you're either an egotistical asshole or you're a bum on the couch if you're not having those thoughts every now and then. So the fact that those thoughts are coming in at least sparingly means that you're trying to do something bigger than yourself and you're trying to stretch the capacity, and that's admirable in its own right. If you like the show or if you found any value at all in it, we would love if you shared it, tagged us on social media, let us know what you think, left a review. That seriously means the world to us.
And in future episodes for a Q&A, you can submit questions to pod@lexijwellness.com.
I was going to say, you have to fill in the blank. I can never remember that one.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. We'll talk to you next week.